welcome to Hancock's VMware Half Hour. And welcome back to another session of Hancock's VMware Half Hour. Well, as it's my 50th video of 2024, that's right, that's 50 videos that I've published in 2024. And this is probably going to be the penultimate video, maybe, that I complete for 2024. And I wanted to save this special edition, the 50th edition, to look at a project, a tech preview that I think is probably one of the, certainly I think the best things to come out of VMware. And that is the ESXi ARM Fling. And on October the 31st, 2024, VMware issued version 2. The latest version is 2.0. And what is significant in 2.0 of the Fling is that it's now based on ESXi 8.0 U3B code. Yep, that's right, folks. We now have an ESXi ARM in ESXi version 7 and ESXi version 8. And to be honest with you, I never thought that it was coming. The ESXi ARM editions, if you are not aware of them, are tech previews. They are not production ready. I have no idea whether or not that they will ever go production ready, but we've been using them here certainly for well over 4 years. And of course, like all things on Hancock's VMware Half Hour, we have covered, I'd like to think, extensively the use of the ARM edition, where we've created Windows 11 ARM, we've created VTPMs, we've booted our mini ESXi 7 cluster from an iSCSI LUN, Synology iSCSI LUN, over PoE. We TFTP boot them to update them, and it was just under a year ago that one of my last videos of 2023 was updating VMware vSphere Hypervisor 7 ARM edition, of course, from 1.12 to 1.15 on a Raspberry Pi 4. I think 1.15 may or may not have been the last version of 7.0. And if you go to the VMware Flings on Broadcom, and I'll put the link in the description, then you can download the depot file, which is what we're going to do today. Well, I'll come on to that. Or you can use the ISO to install it on your Raspberry Pi 4. Here in the lab, we're going to be using the Compute Module 4, the CM4. And of course, there are lots of other ARM devices that you can also install the ESXi ARM Edition. It's not just limited to the Raspberry Pi. But you can build yourself a very low power, small home lab for VMware vSphere. However, if you want to use VMware vCenter Server, you will have to find an Intel 86 source somewhere to host that. So without further ado, we're going to do a number of things today, really. We're actually going to leverage a video that I created recently on how to upgrade offline a VMware vSphere Hypervisor ESXi 8.0 U3 to ESXi 8.0 U3B using a depot file. Well, we're going to do exactly the same, but we're going to apply that expertise and knowledge in that video to this video today using ESXi ARM. So I've already downloaded the depot file from Broadcom. and I've already uploaded it to our VMFS data stores. I've already got SSH connections into our ESXi 006.ARM host. And I'm just going to show you that here. And I can also show you that here. This is our the HDMI output from our CM4 device, which is currently on the LAN as well. So I'll just turn that off because otherwise I'll forget and I'll leave it running and you won't see any of the video. That's obviously connected into HTML. These are actually, let's say I was just looking, this is actually an 8 gig version. I've got a couple of 4 gig versions knocking around. We are running the UEFI firmware version 1.35. Now, I might have mentioned this in the past, that I have struggled really, to be honest with you, to use a later version. In the recent documentation I've noticed for ESXi ARM, it does cite version 1.38 as the latest version. I've struggled with that version 1.38, 1.37 and 1.36. So for me in the lab, I've certainly found that the UEFI firmware version 1.35 is stable for me. However, that bloody synchronous exception problem still exists. Now, this isn't a problem with ESXi ARM. This is the open source developed firmware for Raspberry Pi and the UEFI firmware that is the cause of this problem. Just to get that away before people start blaming ESXi ARM. Once you've actually got ESXi up and running on your Raspberry Pi, they are very, very stable indeed. So we've already got SSH enabled on our host, and we've already got the ESXi shell enabled on our host. And I've already uploaded the depot file to our VMFS data store. So I'm just going to shrink that. Now, if you've been following these ESXi updates that I do, you know that I love to have 2 putty sessions. One putty session basically is tailing the var log ESX update log, so I can see what's actually going on in the background, shows me any error messages. And then the other SSH session is where we're actually basically going to run the update. Now, I'm going to go back to another video that I did. And of course, all the commands are exactly the same between the ESXi ARM edition and the ESXi Intel edition. They're no different. They're exactly the same. But one of the things that I've had a few questions about is finding the profile information from our depot file or from our update file. And my bad, I probably assumed that you already knew all the command line switches on the ESX CLI software sources. But to actually list, you can list the profiles from within the depot file or any other update file by using ESX CLI software sources profile list -D, followed by specifying the depot file or the update file. And it will show you here the profiles that you can use to update your host. Now, I think no tools is self-explanatory. That one doesn't include VMware tools, and the standard one is the one that does include VMware tools. So we're going to use that profile. And again, I'm going to use this command, which again is the bog standard ESX CLI software profile update -P. That's our profile. Profiles are available from the release notes. If you want to go to the Broadcom website and look at the release notes, you will find that the profiles are listed in there as well. So there are 2 mechanisms to get them, but that's where the profile comes from. And a lot of people have actually reached out and asked and said, how do I find the bloody profile? You don't say how to do it. So my bad, here it is. As I said, you use the sources profile list command -D. So -D followed by the path. Now, as you will know, I like to use the -- dry - run command. So no changes going to be made to our host at this time, but it will check, he says, it will check and report any issues. However, I have noticed with ESXi 8, so I'm just going to hit enter on that, and we're just going to have a little look here at the tailed logs if we can see any error messages. Now, I had assumed that by doing a dry run, it would report any issues to us, and it doesn't. I have actually basically come across when I've been doing dry runs, assuming that doing a dry run and looking at the information of a dry run, it's going to basically report any errors to us, so we can actually basically fix them before we do the completed run. But I think we may actually find, so I'm going to run exactly the same command again, but I'm just going to delete the dry run and I'm going to go again. And I think we might see an error. Anyway, second espresso of the day. So I'm just going to hit enter. You watch that. I'll drink this. I'll have a little look up here. And as I said, I always thought that dry run actually basically reported any issues that it would find, but it may or may not do. Well, I'm thinking it might do. And it says also recently, I have actually basically seen this in the wild as well. It was reported. I saw it at a couple of client sites this week and last week. And then there we go. It has crapped out there. So if we look carefully, basically there's a change to ESXi 8 that it does not like SHA1 certificates anymore. And because we've had this added to VMware vCenter Server 7 that has a certificate authority, a CA certificate from our Microsoft Active Directory certificate services, which is an SHA1 certificate. When that's joined to vCenter Server actually basically drops that certificate authority on the host. So that's why it's got that certificate, an SH-1. And again, as you can see here, support for certificates with weak signatures algorithm SH-1 has been removed in ESXi 8. You will also find that if you've got a VMware vCenter Server 7 with a certificate that you've installed on it, again, which is SHA-1 and not SHA-2, you will also find that it will crap out at the vCenter Server Upgrade 8 as well, citing exactly the same reason. So be aware, if you're moving your environment from 7.0 to 8.0, SHA1 certificates are now deprecated because of security, and you'll have to make sure that you update them beforehand. Anyway, I'm going to cheat here. I'm not going to remove it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to regenerate all the certificates on the host. So I'm going to use /sbin generate -certificates. That effectively is going to create default certificates for me again, and hopefully that will also. So I'm just basically going to do a restart. So by doing a regeneration of the certificates again, that's regenerating the certificates for the host, and it will also basically sort out the CA store as well. So hopefully now if we do, I'm going to do a dry run again, just to sort of kind of show you that doesn't check in a dry run the certificates, which does surprise me. That caught me out the other day. So that hasn't, again, the message dry run host not changed. The following installers will be applied. That tells me what VIBs are going to be removed, tells me what VIBs are going to be installed. So now we're going to do it for the final time. I'm going to do, so this is the real pucker thing now that we're going to do. So I'm just going to hit enter, and hopefully now that's obviously going to go off and do off. It's going to go off and do a real update and make those changes permanent. Now, it took me a while to remember, and we'll see this at the very end. It took me a while the other day, and I was scratching my head because I couldn't really understand how a couple of these CM4s are working, to be honest. It was over 12 months, I think, that I did them. And when I came back and just turned them on and they booted, and I'm scratching my head thinking, well, what were they booting from? There's no SD cards, that they weren't eMMC, because the CM4s have an eMMC component or an SD card component. So you can either boot them from an SD card, or you can boot them from their own internal eMMC, but not sort of kind of both. And I think that's because the pins on the CM4, I think, are actually tied down to the same, it's either an SD card slot or it's an internal eMMC chip. But anyway, the eMMC was blank. So I was scratching my head as to how on earth I'd done these. And then I remembered that I'd also basically done iSCSI boot from LUN as well with them. And you will see that here at the very end, when we update this, the reference to the iSCSI LUN. There we go. You can see it there. Boot 008, VMware ESXi, boot 007, UEFI Synology iSCSI storage. Okay. And that's it. That's our update completed. So these will be the VIBs that are removed. These are the VIBs that will be installed. So the only thing for us to do, and I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll turn on that, is we will just need to log in again. It's typical that it's logged out, and we will reboot the host, and on this screen over here, you should be able to see shortly that this host actually basically restarts. Okay, I just heard the SSH connections get dropped, and there we go. We are now booting again. So I'm going to disappear while that boots up, and we will speed that up in post. Okay, I'm back. Well, there you go. I had thought today that we might actually basically get away in the lab without a synchronous exception. There was bound to something to go wrong today in Hancock's VMware half hour. So I'm going to have to basically just go off and replace that single file. Maybe we'll do a video on that at a later date, showing you how to fix these. In fact, actually, I already have a video where I've showed you how to fix this. Anyway, so I will be back after fixing the synchronous exception, and we will then restart this host, and we will boot it up again, and hopefully the synchronous exception will disappear. So I'll be back shortly. Well, it took me a little bit longer than I'd actually anticipated, but hopefully I think that we've fixed our issue. And again, I have actually I have actually basically created a little video about how to fix our synchronization exception issue, which again is not a feature or a bug of ESXi ARM Fling. It's actually a feature of the UEFI firmware that corrupts a file. So I'm just checking to see whether or not that we get a iSCSI login on our host, on our Cyrus NAS Synology NAS. So I'm just checking to see whether or not that, and we've got another synchronous exception again. I don't believe it. This is just absolute nonsense. And there was actually a nice SCSI login from it. This is just nonsense. Okay, so I've been really suffering in the lab here. I'm going to have another espresso a minute. Really suffering in the lab here with this synchronous exception problem. I know I'm not going to bother chopping out the last edit. So we've reconfigured. I do wonder whether maybe it's iSCSI. Don't know. But anyway, so let's just go for it. I'm just going to click reset. So that's going to restart the CM4. And again, these problems with the synchronous exception are specific to the UEFI firmware. They are not ESXi ARM fling related at all. Anyway, so I'm currently looking at the tailed logs, the iSCSI log on the Synology NAS. So I can see from that, okay, so we've got our Raspberry Pi post screen, and I'm just looking on the logs here to see whether or not that we actually basically start getting iSCSI logins to the LUN. Okay, there they are, 1437 iSCSI login to the LUN. So hopefully no synchronous exception, fingers crossed. And that's actually going to start booting from the LUN. Okay, that looks good. Ooh, there we go. So a little bit longer than usual. I'm still thinking that we're in the Hancock's VMware half hour, but these are the challenges that we have, in the lab here, and I share them with you, so you can sort of kind of see what shit happens really in real life trying to get all this stuff working. You just need patience, and of course, this is all a tech preview, so this isn't production. So these are the little issues that you've sort of kind of got to deal with really, and I will have a little look at the iSCSI issue, and I think that William Lamb, I'll have to look back. I think William did. I think he made some changes. I think to the Raspberry Pi itself that could actually TFTP boot without the use of using any of the loaders, the UEFI loader, on eMMC or SD cards, which, as I said, I'm not quite sure where the issue is coming from. I've not looked at the development cycle of this, where this corruption is actually basically appearing from. I was led to believe that it was one particular file that was being corrupted, whether that's on the write or the read. So, in the past, I've tried to sort of kind of, make as smaller changes as possible to that file. But even if you copy a new file over, then just restarting the CM4. The same happens with Raspberry Pi, so it's not specific to CM4s or Raspberry Pis. And the Raspberry Pis that we have, we use SD cards. The CM4s we use eMMC, so it doesn't really seem to be whether it's eMMC, whether it's SD card. We're still experiencing this issue. Whether or not that it is because we are using boot from LUN, we need to basically move all that back. The eMCC sizes are big enough to accommodate that as an installable storage device for ESXi. Okay, so we're just waiting for this host to boot up. If I turn on that, and we can have a little look, see whether or not that we've okay, so our host is actually basically now responding, and it's still loading up modules. So whilst it's doing that, I'll disappear, speed this bit up in post. Okay, so our ESXi 006 ARM Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4 has been upgraded and eventually has, after we've suffered endless synchronous exception issues, we've managed to get it configured, we've managed to get it booted, we booted from a nice SCSI LUN. So all there's really for me to do now is turn off that, and we will log in. And hopefully we can see that it's still in maintenance mode. So if we look at our image profile, updated ESXi 8.0 U3B 243644478. So there we go. Oh, it's been a long one. Being patient with those synchronous exception errors. And again, as I said, it's not a feature of the ESXi ARM build at all. That's very stable. It's the underlying UEFI, open source, community-driven code, etc., where that exists. So we just had to be patient with the tech preview as it exists. So thanks very much for watching this 50th video of Hancock's VMware Half Hour for 2024. I've got one more video to do, maybe on something very special. Again, if you've enjoyed watching this video and you're watching it on Experts Exchange, then please endorse. If you're watching it on YouTube, then please thumbs up. If you don't like it at all, then don't like it, and put a comment as to why you don't like it. Anyway, so thanks so much for watching. Toodle-pip, and come back for the next video, which is a sort of kind of little special one, and I think I have sort of kind of dropped a few Easter eggs or hints here and there as maybe what it could be. Anyway, so once again, thanks so much and good afternoon to you. Bye-bye.